Hello and good morning. Before I started talking about my laws and everything, I wanted to show you a little bit of my personal favorite place in all of Moscow. That's my bike. This is Kratsko Hills. You can see Moscow City off in the distance there, about 20 kilometers from here. Maybe 15 or so. And yeah, no, the whole area is just beautiful, beautiful hills and everything. You can't really see them too well on here, but yeah, it's a bit of a hike up to just one of these. So yeah. Anyway, for my laws, I wanted to talk about mostly the UNESCO education equality and some countermeasures that have been introduced here in Russia. So of course, the UNESCO Foundation wants to bring education to everybody, especially equality between the genders and little girls and all that good stuff. You know, all around great organization. And they do some great work all around the world, mostly in Africa and Southeast Asia these days. They have focused away from Eastern Europe. Part of the result of that is you get such things as the anti-gay propaganda law here in Moscow and in Russia in general. And what that does is that it just essentially teachers aren't allowed to speak about any sort of homosexuality whatsoever, or transgenderedness, anything at all. Which makes history class really interesting, because what do you say when you tell the children, or I suppose teenagers in that case, that Rome had a ratio of 7 men to every 1 woman? What do you say then? Oh, ooh, yeah. The other thing that's been going on is that out in Altai, there has been a new policy introduced at the school level of segregating the classes based on sex. So little boys and little girls go to school separately. And we have schools like that in the States, we have schools like that all over the world. However, it's not the entirety of the population doing this. Altai is looking to try to make this an example for the entire federation, that little girls can be taught to be girls. Not that their education can be better, but that the traditional values of being a girl can be taught. Yeah. Let that sink in for a few minutes, because that really blew my mind when I saw that as well. And when I think about it a bit more, it's not all that surprising. Russia in general is an ultra-conservative culture. And especially when there's this current push from the West to try to mitigate a lot of Russian interests, it makes sense that these things would be happening right about now. It's not great, to say the least, but something that Russia continues to show us throughout its history is that when Russia takes a step in a direction away from progression, they will eventually make that step back towards progress, and even possibly have the chance to surpass certain other countries in terms of forward thinking. Alright guys, so there you have it. That's one of my favorite places in Moscow, and one of my least favorite subjects to talk about in Russia. But I do think it's very important to remember that given the history of Russia and its history of significant and sudden change, none of these things are going to be permanent.